I just was every once in a while, you hear there's these musicians that kind of are on the periphery, and every once in a while one of their songs shows up. So I was just enjoying when I saw her name, like, oh, Susie, because she's not quite as famous in New Thought churches as say Karen Drucker or Daniel Nahmod or some others. Um, so, good morning.
Good morning.
How we doing? Great, good. Fabulous. Some faces are still deciding. So I'm talking about Myrtle Fillmore today. The talk title was Happy Birthday, Myrtle. And her birthday is August 6th, and she would have been 168 if she were still with us. And Charles Fillmore's birthday is August 22nd. Charles and Myrtle are the co-founders of Unity, in case you didn't know who they were. And Myrtle is really the person that is really responsible for the beginnings of Unity, because she grew up with a sickly father. She grew up in a family that, like her dad was sick and other relatives had been sick, and so she was ill. And they just, which we kind of all grow up that way, in varying degrees of sickness. Whatever the dis-ease is, whether it's a physical ailment, whether it's sort of emotional things, or there's messages, we all grow up with something sort of embedded. The joke is, our mothers installed our buttons so they know where to push, right? It's the same idea. It's the same principle that we inherit dis-ease. We inherit, whether it's physical illness or emotional illness or spiritual illness or whatever it is. And so she and Charles were at a lecture one evening by listening to a gentleman named Eugene B. Weeks, and she heard a statement that said, "As a child of God, I do not inherit sickness." And light bulb goes on, and Myrtle Fillmore says, wait a minute, just because my dad was ill, or just because of this, just because of that, if I really believe I'm a child of God, then why am I taking this on? And so she created this affirmation that I do not inherit sickness, that if I believe I'm a child of God, born of perfection, then I don't inherit sickness. And so she spent her life, from that moment on, she spent the rest of her life healing herself. She had been ill herself. The way the story goes is she had tuberculosis, but the truth is we don't actually know what she had. But she had been given a short time to live before, I think 6 months or some very short period of time to live from whatever illness she had. And after the lecture, she decided to take that on. The lecture was about the power of the mind to heal the body. And so she decided I'm going to try this out. Let me see how this works. And of course, Charles, being very scientific and very a good skeptic, a healthy skeptic, said, well, let me watch and see what she does. Let me watch and see how this goes for Myrtle. He's a very science-minded. Charles Fillmore spent his life researching and learning and, discovering other things. He was very much, let me find out the information and see how that works. Let me try it, like a big experiment. He was a real estate developer, and so really very practical, very down to earth. And by the time they got here to the Midwest and, landed what is now Unity Village, they were just in their 30s, their early mid 30s. So they were, I think most of the time we tend to think of them as old, because that's every picture you see, they're old. But the reality is when they got to what is now Unity Village, when they really started this Society for Silent Help, which is how Unity was started, they were young people, so kind of rebels. So Myrtle decided to, take on this challenge of healing her body through her mind, and had this affirmation, as a child of God, I do not inherit sickness, and proceeded to literally heal her body. She spent time in prayer and meditation and healed her body, and went on to, and even more and greater. She definitely took on the words of Jesus that said, greater works than these you will do. And she definitely, to me, I think she definitely took that on. So what I wanted to talk about today was one of her, if you're not familiar with any of her writings, there's a couple of books I would point you to. One is called How to Let God Help You, The other one is called Myrtle Fillmore's Healing Letters. Myrtle Fillmore's Healing Letters used to be called Letters of Myrtle Fillmore. So you can find it either way, it's the same thing. And what they are is they are letters to people that wrote to her or wrote to the Society for Silent Help for prayer. And so she wrote them back. This is before the time of email and before the time of telephones and before the time of anything other than handwritten letters. Remember those? And a stamp, paper, ink, yeah. Other than writing a check for a bill, yes, she wrote, and it wasn't just her. It very quickly became many people writing back. So these two books, Myrtle Fillmore's Healing Letters, How to Let God Help You, are collections of her responding to people's prayer requests. And also you can go online to unity.org and you can find a whole bunch of her letters that have not been published. There's an online collection of Myrtle's writings that are archived, but it's in her handwriting. So it reads a little bit slower because it's very, very cursive, but they're not in print. Book form, so there's even better stuff. So what I wanted to talk about today in honoring Myrtle Fillmore, the kind of our roots, is I think sometimes what gets lost is like, oh, we're going to talk about an old person, but what I want to do is I want to take some of what was old and bring it forward. That's what I'm always doing in anything that I'm teaching, anything that, in classes, and if I'm talking about Myrtle, if I'm talking about Charles, I want to take because New Thought, Unity is part of a collection of religions known as New Thought, which is not really new. They were tapping into what was already present. They were tapping into a belief system around the world that was already alive. Our roots are very much, whether you know this or not, are very much in Hinduism, much more so than Christianity. Our belief of one presence and one power, our belief that the divine is within and as each of us is the power of the mind, is all very Hindu. I know, I see a couple of like, really? Yes. The language is very Christian because of where we are. Think of the time that Charles and Myrtle showed up in the Midwest, Victorian era Midwest Christian America. So, and Charles was not raised in any religion. Myrtle was raised Methodist. So that's the world they lived in, was this Christian world. So the language is very Christian. And the demonstration, the role models they had was Jesus. So the language is very Christian, but underneath it, our principles are very Eastern philosophy. So what they're tapping into is philosophy and belief that was already present and had been for millennium, for a long, long time. So the chapter that I wanted to, in Myrtle Fillmore's Healing Letters, she has this, one of the chapters or one of the letters is called Threefold Healing. And I think that it is probably the quintessential, really foundational teaching that she brought to life through her own demonstration, and whenever she was writing to somebody. She's always pointing to this threefold healing. And what she meant by threefold healing was body, mind, and spirit. That I think most of us today go, well, duh, yeah, like not new. No, it's not. I think most of us would say, yeah, I get it. I got to take care of body. I got mind, mental work to do, which she also connected to emotional, and I got spiritual work to do. But I just wanted to draw your attention to some of the things what she had to say, because I think it just really is to refocus us. Myrtle Fillmore was really good at being laser sharp. You did not get away with anything. If you were going to write Myrtle a letter asking for prayer support, be prepared for the answer. Be prepared for your being asked to, you have work to do. It's almost like I can imagine her kind of going, you want prayer support, but what are you doing? And I'm going to give you a couple of pieces from this one that's called Threefold Healing, which is her response to a letter. What we don't have is the letter that somebody wrote. I always want to know, well, what did they say? So she opens this, so she's responding to a gentleman that's written for prayer support. So she opens it with this thing. She says, 2 of your statements prompt us to a little explanation before giving the outline for treatment. First of all, so she's quoting the letter. It says, so the gentleman says, I'm wondering if you will send me, also my brother, some health vibrations. And then the gentleman says, we are asking you to relieve us through the silent unity healing. And this is her response. We're not sure that you understand that you are to cooperate with us. I'm like, we're not sure that you understand that you are to cooperate with us by studying the truth so that you may come into the understanding of the divine laws of health and life and prosperity, and by joining us daily in prayers. So right off the bat, she's saying, great, got your letter, fabulous. We need to straighten a few things out before we get into what the treatments, what she calls treatments, what we would call prayer. And she's saying that you have to cooperate with us. You have work to do. And then she goes on to say, we will not say that the work that we do here has nothing to do with healing, but we do not promise results unless we have the faith and the cooperation of those for whom we pray and to whom we give instruction. So it's almost like, I think this day and age, it would be like a disclaimer, a codicil, something that's kind of at the end of the prayer that but what she's saying, we're not promising results. There's something that you have to do. There's a cooperation. There's a connection with energy. There's work for you to do. And then she goes on to say that we're not so much concerned with the results as we are with the growth in consciousness that will make the results abiding. So I think sometimes we get stuck in prayer. I think sometimes we get stuck in our work of denials and affirmations. I think we get a little stuck sometimes in practicing truth principles because we're looking for the result. We're looking for what the end is here. And what she's saying is we're not really so concerned about the results as we are with the consciousness for those results to be abiding, which I translate into, we're not so concerned about the outcome as much as we are with the mechanism, consciousness. As much as we are with the mechanism, sort of the method to the madness that would produce results, right? Whatever those results are. Because if you want to know what you're holding in consciousness, look around at your life. It will very clearly tell you. If you want to know what you're holding in, unconscious mind as well as conscious mind, we look around at our life. Do you need a cough drop? I have some. I think I have some. So the results are abiding, whatever those results are. If the results are misery, guess what? They're abiding. If the results are joy, guess what? They can be abiding. And we don't want coughing to abide. We want to support and help. I thought I had one. Give me 1 minute. Here we go, I think. No, that's a Tums. Great. See? Speak the word. Yes. So she says we're not so concerned with the results as we are with the consciousness. It's the consciousness that's what we want to pay attention to. That's what she's focusing on, because that's the mechanism that creates whatever we have in our life. Now, that doesn't mean that we do it solely, right? There's individual consciousness, there's collective group consciousness. So you want to know what's going on like in your church, you want to know what's going on in country, in town, or whatever, you can see kind of what's being held collectively. So then she goes on to say, this health law is threefold. Spiritual, keeping a person assured of their God-given freedom. Mental, giving intelligence to do whatever you need to do for health and success. And physical, so we form habits to use those powers, to use those faculties. Then she says, there's a tendency to disregard the harmonious combination of those three elements. So we have a tendency to not actually connect the dots with those three things, that spiritual, mental, physical are all equally important. We have a tendency, especially in this culture, in part in our culture, we have a tendency to focus more on one than the other, or maybe we pick two and not all three. And she's saying that you have to focus on all three pieces. I know for myself, the physical one has been the most difficult one because of what I hold in consciousness, because of what I hold in the subconscious. In Unity, we teach there's these three phases of mind. Subconscious is our memories, our experiences, kind of the soul. It's sort of like a warehouse, a closet of memories, of messages, of experiences, and those all inform the conscious mind. So those all inform what outpictures in my life. So she says, one who remembers and lives by the spiritual promises of the law of health will not worry or seek to manage other people's affairs. I thought, dang you, Myrtle. She's saying to this gentleman that in a very nice way, I think, that if we remember and we live by this law of health, which is spiritual, this threefold healing, spiritual, mental, physical, then we stop meddling in other people's affairs. Then it's not necessary to meddle in another's affairs. What she says in several other places, in healing letters and in How to Let God Help You and other places, is that to place them, she says, you don't have to, it's not a good use of your energy. They have their own, quote unquote, indwelling Lord. That's how she calls it, their own indwelling Lord. And you need to just place them back. It's like giving them back to their own indwelling Lord. When I remember the very first time I read that, I do not to seek to manage other people's affairs. I'm like, oh, thank God, I can stop worrying, because we get stuck in that because we want to help people, right? We're caring, we're loving, we're giving, we care about other people. So we always want to do this, and what she's inviting us into in every step of the way in this book, in this chapter, and everything that she does is this level of self-awareness. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? How are you doing it? She's always kind of bringing you back to, it's like it's not even a moving target. There's just one target, and she's constantly bringing you back to it. She says, so in terms of our mind, she says, one who is aware of the mental side of his health seeks to keep himself free from the limitations and the opinions and demands of others. I don't know about you, but I'm constantly having to remind myself that, oh, wait, that's an opinion of another. That's a demand of another. How often do I hear the words come out of my mouth that I have to, I need to? I use words have to, need to. How often do I actually stop and pay attention to what I'm doing is what I'm doing because I'm thinking I'm obligated to do it. I have to do it. I need to do it. Which is, to what she's telling me is, no. If I'm doing something because there's this sense of obligation, I'm actually draining my own energy. I'm actually doing a disservice. It doesn't mean that we don't have things that need to be done. It doesn't mean that we don't have to, we need to eat, we need to sleep. You maybe have to take the kids to school. You maybe have to go to your job because paycheck, you got to pay the bills. But it's the mental attitude that she's talking about around those things. Then she goes on and she talks about what she does in the chapter. She talks about body, she talks about mind, and then she sort of intertwines the spiritual piece of this threefold healing. So she says, for the body, one who is determined that his physical life will show forth the peace and order of spiritual reality and divine intelligence. So if I'm determined that my physical body will show peace, that my physical body will show order, that my physical body will demonstrate this divine intelligence that we say we believe, right? There's one presence and one power. You said it at the beginning. If I truly believe that, then is my body demonstrating that? That's what she's telling us to do. And then she says, is considerate of his body and careful in his demands upon it. Is considerate of his body and careful of his demands upon it. My question, when I read that, I think to myself, how often do I hold my body gently, considerately, and tenderly? Really. How often do I hold my body in hands of being gentle, being considerate, and being tender? Not as often as that would be good for me. Not as often as if I want to demonstrate this divine intelligence, if I want my body to demonstrate this one presence and one power, I have a responsibility to hold it gently, to be considerate of it, and to be tender with it. And sometimes that means in our culture, I have to even realize that I have a body, not stop here, right? We disconnect from our body. We do. We've been taught to disconnect from our body. Anytime that when I'm working with an individual with one-on-one or even groups of people, when there's upset, there's angst, there's frustration, there's irritation, there's conflict, whatever the word is, I'll ask the person, where do you feel it in your body? Where do you feel it in your body? And most of the time, I get silence. Most of the time, the initial response is silence, because we're not aware of where we're holding that feeling in our body. To hold our bodies considerately, tenderly, gently, to demonstrate that divine intelligence that she's asking us to do, means I have to, first of all, be connected to it. I have to know where it's alive. Never mind going and running on a treadmill, right? I mean, we all know exercise is good. Go walking, treadmill, lift weights, swimming, whatever, tennis, whatever it is that you love to do to have your body be physically in motion. Intellectually, we understand that, and some people participate in it, others don't. But even before that, are you even connected to where you hold thoughts? They're not just thoughts in mind. We hold them in our body. Am I even aware of where I'm holding them in my body? So then she says, so she goes through all of that, this poor guy, right? All he's probably written in is for prayer. And he's getting back this dissertation on what he needs to do. So then she says, so you see, there is more to our silent unity ministry than a formula of words to be said at intervals. Like, oh, poor guy. There's more to this than just saying prayer. She's saying, there's work, dude. And she's just saying in a letter, never mind if you're sitting in front of her. I have no idea what she would have done if I was sitting in front of her. She would be off and running, right? So there's more to be done. She says, you have to seek to incorporate an understanding of truth in your consciousness. You have to seek to incorporate an understanding of truth in your consciousness. What that means is you have to seek to incorporate truth into your consciousness. Means, what does it mean to you? Not what I say it means and you take it on. It means you hear what I say, and to incorporate it means to bring it into your body, right? Incorporate, the root of the word is corporal, meaning the body. So I bring it into my body. But the way that I do that is what does it mean to me? How does it work in my life? I believe the truth I can demonstrate, which doesn't mean I just blindly take on what you say, but I take it on, I wear it like a coat, maybe a pair of shoes, and wear it until it's comfortable, until it means something to me. Because it's a little bit different for each of us, but we have to take it in. She says a lot, and I'm like picking and choosing. So here, she goes on, and then she gets to the point. She doesn't just say, so you see, there's more to our silent unity ministry than words. And then she goes on, here's the more. So then she starts to talk about what illness is. She starts to talk about sickness and disharmony and imperfection within the organism. So, and for her, organism is whether it's the person or your liver or your family. She talks about organism in lots of different ways. She says the result of failure to identify oneself with God, with the divine force, and understanding how to lay hold of and express one's inheritance of spiritual powers. That's what she says weakness or illness is the failure to identify, not just the failure to identify oneself with God, principle, not just our failure to identify with what is good, right? You said at the beginning, one presence and one power, God the good. Not just our failure to identify with that, but to lay hold of it and to express it. So that means there's work for me to do. Express means to actually be in action. That's what she goes on and on and on. And I know I say that like on and on and on and on. What she goes on and on about and what she's saying is that I have to do it. I can't just pray. One of my favorite quotes by Charles Fillmore says, people think, how does he say it? He says, most people think that most people want to pray and pray and pray and pray. They don't get that you have to act. The body needs to be acted upon. You can't just pray. And I remember the first time I read that, I'm like, ooh. So it's not just seeing it right, I have to set it right. It's both. And that's what she's saying, is you have to be in action. Truth means little until it's applied to the individual cases and needs. I think one of my favorite pieces is actually at the very end of the chapter. One of the things she says is sometimes where we can get a little bit stuck is, okay, so especially in our denials and affirmations, we Unity practices, has a prayer practice of denial and affirmation. A denial is we deny the power an experience or a condition has over us. An affirmation is we affirm that there's one presence and one power. An affirmation is bringing ourselves into alignment with that God principle, with that truth principle. What she says about denials is that it's not just the mental cleansing piece of it, that's the what part of the mind piece, the denial, but it's also the physical. Meaning where a denial is actually a mental cleansing, a mental relaxation, but the body, you have to relax the body. So if you practice denials, if you practice affirmations, when you practice a denial, Myrtle Fillmore's denial as a child of God, I do not inherit sickness. She didn't just say it, she brought it into her body to literally feel it. Literally, what does that feel like? So here's a very practical application. So if you have a situation or something in your life, it doesn't even have to be illness. It could just be some, discomfort or unease in a relationship or something at work or whatever it is. A denial of denying the power it has over your life, not just to say it and to think it, but what does it feel like in your body? Like, go that next step. Because once you feel what that is in your body, now I can affirm and I can feel the affirmation. Because then she goes on to say that positive thinking quickens the cells, which then we know is going to have an impact out here, but you have to feel it in your body, which makes it irresistible to the soul. You have to feel it in your body. That makes it irresistible to the soul. And now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is juicy. This isn't just a mental exercise. She's inviting us into our entire being, into using all of who we are. She says, when the soul is encouraged to develop the mental faculties and to open the heart to a great feeling of love for humanity, it opens the subconscious door that allows it to peer into the past. So a denial is not allowing us to peer into the past. So we need to look at the past. Not to dwell on it, but we need to look at it. We don't deny it, but we look at it, and we have work to do with it. My favorite piece of this whole chapter, favorite piece she wraps it all up at the end, is she says, the past does not worry him. Now remember, she's writing this letter to this gentleman who has asked for prayer support for him and for his brother. And she's already said, yeah, you have work to do. Like, we can do it, we'll pray, but really it's up to you. But she says at the end, the past does not worry him, meaning his brother. The future does not entice him. He knows that a full measure of good is his here and now. So she's saying the past, we don't need to worry about the past, which doesn't mean we don't look at it and do our work around it. The future doesn't entice us, meaning we don't get sucked into it. We recognize it's there, but we recognize what the future looks like depends on what I'm doing now. And he knows that a full measure of good is here and now. He profits, this is my favorite sentence in the whole chapter, probably one of my favorite things she ever said. He profits by the past, glories in the now, and is fearlessly looking forward to the future. He profits by the past. How often do we look at the past and go, I have to do more self-reflection, but forget that there is riches in it. I can profit from that in ways that I can't even imagine. I can glory in what is right here and right now. I can see my good that's right here and right now. Sometimes it's got interesting disguises. Sometimes my good is disguised in some really distorted ways, right? And I can fearlessly look forward to the future. Fearlessly look forward to the future. I can only fearlessly look forward to the future if I have an understanding that I'm making it now. We are making it now. Otherwise it becomes, I'm not sure what's coming, I don't know. There's some magical divine plan out there that's going to unfold. I don't know what it is. No, there's no unfolding of an unknown plan. You're ordering it. That's what divine order is. You are divinely ordering the future and the present. You're making it now. That's what we teach. And if you're not sure about that, take that in, wear it a little bit. Mark now has office hours. Go stump Mark with some metaphysical questions. Yeah. So hold that for a moment. He profits by the past, glories in the now, and is fearlessly looking forward to the future. Amen? I thank Myrtle. I hope Myrtle has a very happy birthday. And I think we're going to sing. Yes? when I pray.